That's why Carolina's in Chapel Hill and USC's in California. And the university in this state always has been, always will be, Clemson. Print that, tweet that.
And I hope they come in undefeated. That's what I told you before the game. Our team believes. Our team believes. They got heart. We got greatness in us. They say we can't do it. What they say now?
Down go the champs. Auburn's 17-game win streak comes to an end.
We got greatness in us. So I told them, you got greatness in you, but you got to make a decision to be great. They made a decision to be great today. And I couldn't think of a better place to end the streak. It's Death Valley, South Carolina, baby.
And now it's time for TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty.
They got the coaches back, and they have each other.
Welcome back, Tiger fans, into another edition of TigerNet Talk, episode number 181. Thank you so much for being here. I'm your host, Lawton Swan, and boy, do we have a treat for you. Jeff Phillips, son of a legendary broadcaster and Clemson announcer, Jim Phillips, will join us on the program in just a few minutes, so I know you'll want to hear from him. We've got some unbelievable questions from some people on TigerNet who've submitted stuff to us there. You can also tweet to us, hashtag TNTalk. All one word. That'll come right to us if you have questions or if you're in the chat room with some of the most loyal fans in all of Clemson sports. Chris, Clemson Swag. All you guys, I know a lot of people still taking in that Clemson baseball game. The Tigers now up 7-2 in that one in the top of the 6th inning. And the Clemson Tigers continue to play well. As you know, we were on the air Sunday night, and Clemson had lost to Maryland. You didn't know what was going to happen in that series, but the Tigers end up picking up the next 2 games, 3-2 over Maryland in game 1, and then 9-5 in the second ball game there against the Maryland Terrapins in that doubleheader. Weather delays again, though, however, forced Clemson and Furman to take their game from Clemson, play both of them at Fluor Field here on Wednesday. Clemson wins game 1 14-2, and now sitting comfortably at 7-2. Furman had scored a couple of runs there just a few minutes ago to trim Clemson's lead, but the Tigers bounce back on top and look very good right now. And I saw a lot of tweets about this Clemson Tiger baseball team. This streak continues. 4 runs by the Tigers in the top of the 6th inning, giving them that 7-2 lead, taking it from 3-2 to 7-2. And for this Clemson Tiger baseball team, I tell you, they truly are. The people who are tweeting about it, they're not wrong. They're playing very good. And boy, has social media changed things. Social media has really changed things, and it's odd that we have the voice of Clemson sports history, all of Clemson Tiger sports, Jim Phillips' son Jeff, joining us in a few minutes, because play-by-play coverage by people outside of ClemsonTigers.com and the sports properties there, Clemson Tiger sports properties, is no longer allowed. Batter by batter, pitch by pitch, you can't do that. They want those limited to the ends of the innings. And look, I completely understand where they're coming from on that. But the problem with it is, to be honest with you, with social media today, all you have to do is follow a hashtag. And you can't make a hashtag something people can't do. And because of that fact, if you make a hashtag Clemson Tiger Baseball, much like we have hashtag TN Talk to reach our program, and someone's following that hashtag, the play-by-play can be tweeted out by a multitude of people. Not just one entity can put this stuff out there. It's really changed things, and I think you're going to see a lot of this. We're going to actually have a show coming up in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk more about social media, the expectations of fans, and how I think when we look at the grant of rights of the Atlantic Coast Conference, when we look at the deal that the SEC's gotten with ESPN, when you look at the deal that the ACC and other conferences are trying to package and piece together, a lot of this new stuff, a lot of this is going to really change. And I know that the Longhorn Network seemed like a terrible idea, and maybe it still is a bad idea, and maybe not enough people are going to pick it up. But I've got a feeling at the rate we're going as human beings, at the rate we're going as citizens, and what we want and what we expect, the fast food world, DirecTV, Comcast, Cablevision, AT&T, all of these companies, Dish Network, anybody who's putting out a programming to you, putting out shows to you, wants to give you stuff that you want, and now it's becoming when you want it. And it would not surprise me if down the road we see major changes to the way, not just the affiliation of the SEC, the ACC, and these conference and these television companies, but I could see it becoming more like what you see with Texas. We'll talk a whole lot about that, though, in the coming weeks. As you know, as we move into summer, the downtime moves in a little bit. But I think that model is established already by a company like Netflix. Netflix, if you don't know enough about Netflix and how it works, they basically were being pressured by the movie industry to stop distributing DVDs, and they would hold them back from Netflix because everybody was ripping them and really no one was purchasing movies anymore. Now, Netflix still exists in the DVD format, but streaming content that you can get when you want it. And in fact, Netflix taking it a step further and saying, okay, well, you don't want to give us the content. I'll tell you what, we're going to buy the content. We're going to package it better. And we're going to let people consume it. And they've got programs that are doing it, and I can see ESPN beginning to do it. I can see schools realizing, much like the Clemson Athletic Department and others have realized, that there is so much value in that content. You're starting to see Clemson games on ClemsonTigers.com. You're starting to see those games exclusively there. It won't be long, I don't think. It will not be long until that happens for sports. And when that does happen, it's going to fit perfectly in tune with what we were talking about last week with our playoff system. They'll go to 16 teams. Because then it's not going to be about what package is Vanderbilt getting because they're in the SEC. It'll be about what package is Clemson getting because they're Clemson. And that might concern you a little bit more than just the ACC, because I know deep in your heart of hearts, you look at Clemson, you say powerhouse program. But nationally speaking, what will happen at that point, it won't be the cream of the crop of the SEC. It'll be the cream of the crop nationally. And can Clemson then compete with the big boys? Because where you sit now in the ACC, Tiger fans, you're good. You're golden. And the more teams they allow into the college football playoff, the better you are. The better you are. Because at Clemson, you have an opportunity to win the Atlantic Division and then ultimately the Atlantic Coast Conference. And if you do that, and there are 4 teams, 8 teams, and eventually maybe 16 teams in this tournament, you'll get in. And I don't know how much stock you all put in the Bleacher Report, but they have teamed up now, I believe, with CNN-SI. We're going to talk about the 10 programs. This is coming up after our interview with Jeff Phillips, son of legendary Clemson broadcaster, the voice, as far as I'm concerned, of Clemson sports, Jim Phillips. His son will join us after this commercial break that's coming up. We're going to talk about the 10 programs who Bleacher Report expects to dominate early in the college football playoff. It's an intriguing list, and I think you might like one of the teams. Well, I know you'll like one of the teams involved in this list. We'll be back, Tiger fans. TigerNet Talk presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty rolls on after these messages from our sponsors. Miss that old familiar ping of college baseball? Well, guess what? You don't have to miss a single game of Clemson Tiger baseball, as you can stay at the closest hotel to Doug Kingsmore Stadium, the Clemson University Conference Center and Inn. Rooms are available for baseball season with lakeside accommodations, complimentary continental breakfast, bar, Seasons Restaurant by the lake, Joe's Place Bar, and the Walker Golf Course. All are waiting for you right around the corner from the stadium. For reservations, contact General Manager Sharon Franks at Sharon Clemson.edu or call toll-free 1-888-654-9020 and ask to speak to Sharon. It's the Clemson University Conference Center and in. Go to www.clemsonuniversityn.com. G-Dog General Dentistry at Oak Grove is located on Highway 1 near the Barnyard Flea Market. Modern, relaxing dentistry with TVs and headphones in every room, nitrous and even oral sedation. Digital diagnostic x-rays for better quality and 85% less radiation exposure. And check out their new Clemson Patient Special. Mention that you heard about G-Dog here on the Clemson Sports Talk programs and receive an extra 5% off all services. If you don't have a regular dentist, go see my dentist, Dr. Rick Jackson at G-Dog. That's General Dentistry at Oak Grove. A winning team requires having great team members. If you're a landowner interested in selling timber or are considering buying or selling land, call the winning team of Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC today. Put the knowledge and skills of professional licensed foresters and realtors to work for your team. To learn more about services offered by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC, visit www.crosscreektimber.com and easily follow the link to real estate or reach them by phone 864-517-3620 or 864-517-3621. Clemson Sports Talk fans, let us help you. With rates starting as low as $100 a month, you can advertise with us through July 2013. We are currently seeking additional advertisers and would love to help you spread the word about your business. Email us clemson81@gmail.com for additional information. Sponsors will receive an ad during the show and a link and logo in the weekly show notes on TigerNet and on the front page of ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Take your business to the Clemson fans around the world with us, ClemsonSportsTalk.com.
The 1988 season was a great year for the Clemson Tigers, finishing 10-2 with a win over Oklahoma in the Citrus Bowl. But it was a better year for Clemson fans. That season, Tigertown Graphics became your source for custom tees, promotional items, and embroidery. Conveniently located in the heart of downtown Clemson, their retail store proudly displays Clemson shirts that are designed and printed directly on site. Whether you're looking for the latest Clemson t-shirts or ordering products for your school, organization, or business, Tigertown Graphics can help with all of your t-shirt needs. Find them online at www.tigertowngraphics.com. A Clemson tradition since 1988.
On Saturday morning, I don't sleep late. I eat an early breakfast and I head out for the gate. I gotta get there early to watch the Tigers play. The dogs are in town, we'll blow them away. I've got my orange t-shirt, got my orange hat, even orange underwear. What you think of that? I'm an orange fan.
Welcome back into another edition of TigerNet Talk presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us here talking about your Clemson Tigers, and we have a treat for you. Jeff Phillips, son of legendary Clemson broadcaster Jim Phillips, joins us here on the program tonight. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. I know Tiger fans hold your father in the highest regard and can't wait to hear from you about his career at Clemson.
Well, Lawton, excited to be with you. Just thank you so much. And all of this got started, I guess, about a week ago on TigerNet when all of the talk about the Ring of Honor came out. And we've over the years, I've been on TigerNet for a long time, and we've seen tons of posts about Dad over the years. And it's always a real rewarding thing to see people, even after all this time, and it'll be 10 years in September, but to see that they still remember him and hold him in the highest regard. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. And I know that, your dad, when he came along back in 1968, it was a completely different era of college sports and the way things were broadcasted. Many kids in the state of South Carolina, North Carolina, that, the lower portion of North Carolina, maybe even Georgia, grew up, Tiger fans, listening to your dad's voice. And there were many nights in the cars. I can remember driving down the road, whether it was from my grandparents' house at Georgetown, maybe I was visiting somebody up in York, South Carolina, and we were on the roads coming down Old Highway 21 and listening to the Clemson Tigers and your dad's voice just resonating throughout the car.
And it has changed so much because back then, obviously, radio was the way you kept up with your team if you couldn't be at a game. There were no TV games except for normally a national game of the week at that time. And it's just a huge difference because back then, you could hit scan on the radio and there'd literally be 8-10 radio stations carrying Clemson or Carolina or Georgia for that matter, and you always knew the game you were tuning into because the broadcasters had been there for so long, and they were so identified with the schools that they were calling the games for, and you knew when you came upon a Clemson game and you heard Dad's voice that it was a Clemson game, or if it was a South Carolina game, Bob Fulton or Larry Munson or Woody Durham at North Carolina, whoever it happened to be. And today you do not have that kind of an identity. And that's not a slam at any of the broadcasters out there because they do a fine job. It's just a different animal these days. TV has changed the landscape so much.
Well, I thought it was so funny, though, because I posted about the first time I ever really stood there in front of your father. I was in Little John Coliseum. I'll never forget. And I said that his voice, it just stuck with me. It was surreal to hear that voice. And your comment back to me in the post at that time, and I didn't know who you were until you identified yourself, was that voice wasn't very surreal, basically, when you were being punished at home.
Well, I guess it's a huge difference when he's your dad, and everyone has a dad, and everyone knows how if you do something wrong, Dad gets to be Dad, and he was Dad, and so the voice was, it had more meaning to us, and that's not to say it didn't have a lot of meaning to Clemson fans because we know it did, and believe me, nobody enjoyed hearing him call a game on the radio more than I did, but obviously it was a different animal for us being family and me and my sister and my mom, and he was there every day for us, and we got to hear him when he wasn't part of a Clemson basketball or football or later baseball and women's basketball or whatever the event would happen to be. He was there for us on a daily basis, and we miss him on a daily basis. I can guarantee you that.
I understand that. And back in 1992, Clemson played Florida State for the first time in conference play, and your father made this legendary call.
Left side, one setback, Jackson. And here is Ward rolling to his right, looking to throw, fires over the middle. It is intercepted. Picked off by James Pratt. 30, 25, 20, at the 10, at the 5, touchdown!
Now, of course, the Florida State Seminoles would go on to win that matchup in Death Valley, but there's no doubt many plays such as that one, people can remember it, and your father's voice going right along with it. What call that he made stands out in your mind? Is there one in particular?
At Georgia, 1986, the Treadwell field goal to win. Because the year before, Kevin Butler had kicked one 60 yards to be clean. It was either the year before or 84. I believe it was 85. And he had kicked one to win the game, and Larry Munson had a legendary call on that field goal. And it was, Munson was as entertaining a broadcaster as there was. But here we were back there in Sanford Stadium, and Clemson was coming off of a rough season in 1985. That was the year that Rodney Williams finally took over as the quarterback when Randy Anderson started the season, and finished up losing the Independence Bowl in Shreveport in a miserable game altogether, and it finished 6-6. And we were always playing Georgia there that second game of the year, it seemed like, and we go into Sanford Stadium, and I say we because I was there, and I just remember that we had a chance to get a little payback, and the thing I remember most is that back during that time, Dad was a stickler for no cheering in the press box, and Shane Robelo, who most people will know from Clemson and later going on to be on the CBS Morning News, and then Karen Blackman, who I believe is still at Clemson, Sammy Blackman's sister, were sitting behind us in the press box, and the kick goes up, and Dad had a unique field goal call. He would say kick is, and the length of the kick, and it finally goes through, and I honestly do not ever remember hearing him that excited. And I was in the booth, and I was spotting the game that day, and really wasn't listening because you were watching the kick, but I remember as we were riding out of the stadium listening to the post-game show and hearing the call and everything, you hear the kick on YouTube, and I go listen to it quite a bit. It's only a 14-second call, but it was just it was Georgia, and that's the exciting thing. We have Georgia coming up first game of the year, and it's such a great rivalry. Should be played every year, and I think every Clemson fan would agree with that. But it was Georgia. It was at Georgia, and it was just such a memory. It was always great riding out of Georgia with a win because we did not get to do it very often. And I just remember that call as much as any. There are so many more. Obviously, Fuller to Butler in '77 is one that's always going to be exciting for Clemson fans. The first ACC championship in 1978 that Clemson had won in quite a few years. That game has some great calls in it. Long touchdowns. Jerry Butler has, I believe, a 87-yard touchdown, and Dwight Clark has a 60-yard touchdown, and a Maryland player actually has a 97-yard run in that game. And he just has some wonderful calls. In fact, just a quick little story here. There was an album made after that season that had a lot of Dad's great calls on it, and I was commenting on one of the posts on TigerNet, and it said, that album had gone the way of my Led Zeppelin and Leonard Skinner albums many years ago. I couldn't tell you where they are, and I could guarantee you they aren't playable wherever they are.
Right.
And a fan actually mailed me a copy of that album today, and I can't wait to listen to it and just hear some of those great calls. There are so many, and it's thrilling every time I get a chance to hear one of them again.
That's the voice of Jeff Phillips, son of Jim Phillips, and Jeff actually had that queued up for the next clip, so let's hear it, Tiger fans.
Sonar is a hole. Bedwell awaiting the snap. The spot. The kick is up. The kick is good!
I love it. That's fantastic. And that Clemson-Georgia rivalry kicking off this season, and the last time that happened, of course, almost just a week before your father passed away, his 400th game, August 20th, 2003 versus Georgia. You mentioned Larry Munson. You mentioned the other legendary broadcasters in the ACC at that time. And when your father passed away, he was the dean of broadcasters in this league. How do those guys get along behind closed doors? When the lights are off, the radio mics aren't on, when it's just Jim Phillips and Larry Munson and they're passing down stories, are these guys getting along, or is there some I guess it's the rivalry?
Back then there was great camaraderie because all of the guys back then came up the same way. They came up as radio guys, and they earned everything they got. Starting back in the 1950s, most of them calling high school games and working up to small college. A few got breaks early, but most of them were like Dad. They worked their way up, and I can think back, and a lot of these guys are dead and gone or retired now. But guys like Johnny Holliday at Maryland and Wally Osley at NC State, and, of course, Woody Durham, and Bob Harris is still at Duke right now. He's the dean of ACC broadcasters now that Woody stepped down, I believe, a couple of years ago. But, of course, Munson and Bob Fulton, Bob and Dad, it's no secret, were great friends. One of the great memories that our family will always have is after Dad died at the game where they honored him that Saturday against Middle Tennessee State, having Bob Fulton call a Clemson touchdown drive.
Unbelievable. I'm getting chills.
In honor of Dad.
Yeah, I'm getting chills.
I will never forget, because I was in the press box that day, and I will never forget that, we had sat in that same press box for many a year, and the same people had the same season tickets below us, every year. And when Bob Fulton was calling that touchdown drive, everyone had their headsets on. Not one person was watching the field, and they were all just staring back at Bob Fulton in amazement that he was on the Clemson radio network calling a touchdown drive for Clemson University. But those guys had a special camaraderie, and we really saw that at Dad's funeral, as most of them made it to the funeral. They drove in from all over ACC country at that time, and, of course, that was traditional ACC country, with Maryland and Virginia being the two northernmost schools. But, I didn't mention Al Serraldo at Georgia Tech. Every one of those guys are legends where they were at those schools. And unfortunately, Bob is really the only one left now. And, I don't believe we're ever going to see that sort of name recognition with schools ever again. You have different announcers doing football and basketball, and there's just not that, radio is not what it was as far as how you follow your team.
Right.
With Clemson this year, I'm guessing probably 10 of the 12 games will be available for us to watch on television. And so there's just not that need like there was before ESPN and all of those things came along. But no, they had a great relationship behind the scenes, and I can tell you they were great friends.
Jeff Phillips, son of Clemson broadcaster Jim Phillips, joins us here on the program to talk about his dad. Stay with us, Tiger fans. We're going to send you out to a short break. TigerNet Talk presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, and we'll get back and talk your questions with Jeff right after this. Stay with us.
About refrigerator Perry and just how hard he hit. And my mama told me homecoming games are the best. On the banks of those late fall, late cartwheel sunsets. I wanted to be just like Jeff Davis when I grew up, tackling Seminoles and Bulldogs, playing football in the mud. So everybody sing Tiger Rag at the top of your lungs, and we'll party like it's 1981.
A winning team requires having great team members. If you're a landowner interested in selling timber or are considering buying or selling land, call the winning team of Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC today. Put the knowledge and skills of professional, licensed foresters and realtors to work for your team. To learn more about the forestry and real estate services offered by Cross Creek Timber, call 864-517-3620 and Cross Creek Realty, LLC at 864-517-3621, or visit www.crosscreektimber.com and easily follow the link to real estate. G-Dog General Dentistry at Oak Grove is located on Highway 1 near the Barnyard Flea Market. Modern, relaxing dentistry with TVs and headphones in every room, nitrous and even oral sedation. Digital diagnostic x-rays for better quality and 85% less radiation exposure. And check out their new Clemson Patient Special. Mention that you heard about G-Dog here on the Clemson Sports Talk programs and receive an extra 5% off all services. If you don't have a regular dentist, go see my dentist, Dr. Rick Jackson at G-Dog. That's General Dentistry at Oak Grove.
There's something about looking and feeling classy that everyone enjoys. Check out Edisto Outdoors, an apparel brand inspired by our southern animals and environment. These shirts feature soft-touch prints that will keep you looking your best in all types of weather. Look for Edisto Outdoors, coming soon to many fine retailers across the state, or visit www.edistooutdoors.com. Technical, comfortable, livable.
Blake Austin of South Carolina Farm Bureau is an insurance agent you can count on to meet all your needs. Home, auto, health, life, you name it, Blake's got you covered, and he can save you on your yearly rates. Call him now for a free quote. 803-259-5008. That's 803-259-5008. Or just go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com and click on the Farm Bureau logo to be connected to Blake. Do like I do and work with the best agent around, and you can tweet that.
Minute and 13 seconds remaining. Tigers lead it 64-62. Edward going right side, coming back left with it. Gets it to Hobbs on the baseline. He'll drive under. Reverse layup is good by Hobbs. 4-point lead Clemson. We're under a minute. Off it comes to Forte for three. He missed it. Rebound is pulled out by Struckman. Tony coming down. Pull it out, Tony. No, he's going to shoot. Make. Oh, he's three for it. A three. 40 seconds to go. 69-62. The Tigers are upsetting number one, North Carolina. 3, 2, 1. It's over. It is over. And there is some kind of celebration going on in Clemson, South Carolina tonight at Little John Coliseum.
Oh, I absolutely love it. I was there for that one. That was actually the day that Dale Earnhardt Jr. passed away, and that kind of overshadowed Clemson knocking off the number one ranked North Carolina Tar Heels. If you watch the video I just put in the chat room for everybody here with us live on the program, That video at the beginning of that call, whoever cut that and put it together, it's me right at the beginning. You'll recognize me, except I have a ton of hair in that video, but the legendary voice of Jim Phillips calling that victory over #1 North Carolina in Littlejohn Coliseum. His son, Jeff Phillips, joins us now on the phone here on TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty. And, Jeff, we were talking during the break about Bob Fulton and these CDs or audio clips that he would put out for Gamecock fans that had a little rendition of a Gamecock, a young Gamecock scoring the game-winning touchdown against Clemson or whatever. You said you had a great story about it.
Let me comment on that clip you played first. See, I was in the car listening to that one, and I got to hear all of that and remember the great memories of that win over North Carolina. It's always to be North Carolina in basketball.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, the year Dad died, Bob, of course, did these little clips where you could send him your name, and he would plug your name into the broadcast, and he would see, believe it or not, Bob got his start in broadcasting back in the 40s. I'm sure you've seen footage of this where they get the ticker tape feed and do the recreation of the baseball.
Oh, yeah.
That's how Bob got his start in broadcasting. And so when he started doing these little CDs after he retired, he was an expert at recreating something, and so he did a really great job. But I was, for Dad's Christmas present, the year that he died, and unfortunately we never got to do it because he passed in September, I was going to have Bob on where basically Dad gaffed and was the one who blew the Clemson Carolina game, and have Bob just trash Dad on the air as like the worst football player ever, and give that to him as his Christmas present. Me and Bob we're going to have a good time with it as far as just making a big joke out of it. I know Dad would have loved it.
Oh, yeah.
But unfortunately it never came about. But yeah, brother Bob passed away here, I believe, about 3 years ago, and every time we lose one of these great announcers, it's a loss that we're never going to be able to replace. It really is.
Well, Jeff, 74 Tiger on TigerNet had a couple of questions he wanted me to ask you. First off, why do you think your dad took to Clemson the way he did? I know he was from Youngstown up in Ohio. He wasn't from around the area. He didn't necessarily grow up a fan, but clearly it became more than a job announcing Clemson for him. What do you think it was that really drew your dad to becoming such a big Tiger fan?
In 1968, he answered a blind ad in a trade magazine, and he tells the story well in his book. Basically, the only Clemson he had really ever heard of was the janitor at his high school in Mineral Ridge, Ohio, and the only Frank Howard he was really familiar with was a baseball player for the Washington Senators. And Frank Howard was the AD at the time. And he sent in some tapes, and all he sent were basketball tapes because he was doing basketball at that time of year at Kent State University up in Ohio, and that's all he had. And so he sent in basketball tapes. Frank Howard would later say he had to be pretty good if I hired him just doing basketball.
That's a good point.
When you get to Clemson, and I think this is something every Clemson fan can relate to. There's something, the old poem, there's something in those hills. And he got here and was working at WFBC, now WYFF TV, as the sports director at the time also. And he fell in love with the area. This became home. Ohio was where he was born and raised, but South Carolina became home. He turned down several more high-profile jobs to remain at Clemson because the people there are the most special in the world. I mean, at a university, and of course, all of us Clemson fans are probably a little prejudiced regarding this, but the people are what make Clemson. And the way that someone like Dad, or a Frank Howard for that matter, from Alabama, or a Danny Ford from an Alabama, that when you show yourself to be someone who loves Clemson, they love you right back. And he felt that love, and he had that sincere love for the university and for the coaches and the players and the fans. And it's just something that is very difficult to walk away from. and it was easy for him to stay. And then the longer he was there, the more family it became. And he was either going to die doing Clemson football or eventually retire and just be a fan and tailgate. Like, it's the one thing we never got to do was tailgate, obviously, because you were working every game day Sunday or Saturday. And he was just going to enjoy being a fan when he finally did retire. But it's the people, plain and simple, at Clemson that make it such a special place.
A couple of more great calls of the voice, or I should say from the voice of the Tigers, Jim Phillips.
Looking to throw deep down the middle. Gardner's there, and it is inside the 10.
Of course, that was the catch number 2, and then this clip from Clemson, Georgia.
So it is first and goal Tigers, the football at the 8-yard line of the Georgia Bulldogs. No score here with 7:29 remaining in the second quarter. Out they come, tunnel wide to the right side. Kendall Alley will be a slot to the right side. Kevin Mack is the fullback. Chuck McSwain the tailback. Jordan takes out, rolling right. Homer firing. It is touchdown, Billy Tuttle! Harry Tuttle went 2 yards into the end zone, cut to the sidelines. The ball was thrown out in front of him. He dove, he caught. It's touchdown. Tigers on top, 6-0. Pauling will try to point out.
Great stuff there from Jim Phillips. His son, Jeff Phillips, joins us here on TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty. And away from the job, away from Clemson, I know your dad did some Greenville Braves baseball games, but what other teams did he follow? Was he a big pro football fan? Was there a team that he followed? Was he a Cleveland Brown guy?
Cleveland Browns and Cleveland Indians. In fact, I just finished watching the Cleveland Indians game on the computer here while I was talking to you. That got passed down to me. But no, he grew up in Northeast Ohio in the 40s and the 50s when the Indians were, before they went on a 40-year drought, basically, that didn't end until the mid-90s. He grew up with childhood idols of Bob Feller and Bob Lemon and you name the old Indian players from that era, Kenny Keltner, Larry Doby from here in Camden, South Carolina. So Cleveland Indians and Cleveland Browns with Otto Graham and Marion Motley, those were his two professional teams. And even though we moved to South Carolina, as you can tell by my accent, when I was very young, that was passed down to me, and I still follow those teams as rabidly as he did. College-wise, he really didn't have a team growing up. He followed Ohio State, obviously, being in that area, and also Pittsburgh, because the Youngstown area is only about an hour from Pittsburgh. And so, he followed the Pitt Panthers and Ohio State, but never really had a college team. But pro baseball, the Indians and the Browns were definitely his two pro teams.
One final call I want to play for you. It was your dad playing, or at least calling the game up at Notre Dame when Clemson went on the road back in 1979, a 16-10 loss. The Tigers, of course, will get their opportunity to renew that rivalry, or at least begin a new rivalry here with Notre Dame, a game that I know Clemson fans will enjoy. But here's that call from the voice of the Tigers, Jim Phillips, as the Clemson Tigers went up to South Bend, Indiana.
10-6, Notre Dame has the lead. Tigers in possession at the 26-yard line of the Irish. Out it comes. Billy Lawton, a misdirect. He keeps. Not to the 20, 15, not at the 10, the 5. Well, there's a lot of orange in South Bend, Indiana, and right now it's all on its feet as Billy Lawton rolled to his right.
Great stuff there from Jim Phillips. Jeff Phillips on the line with us. And, Jeff, a couple of final questions, and we'll get you on your way. I know Clemson fans really appreciate you spending some time with us here on the program, talking about your dad, his legacy.
Can I talk about that call for a second?
Man, you hey, let me tell you, you got it. It's all yours.
I want to brag on my dad a little bit here. All broadcasters reach a point where you get 55, 60, and the eyes start to go, and the brain just doesn't work the way it did when you were 35, 40, 45. And those of us who are getting older know that very well. And when Dad was 69 when he died, and when he was in his 60s, he was not the broadcaster that he was at one time. And he realized that. But he knew he was still very capable, and he enjoyed it, and Clemson fans enjoyed him. And so, he felt very comfortable remaining on. But that time period, that was 1979, and that was a 16-10 win, by the way, not a loss. That was Notre Dame's first loss in their last home game, I want to say, since the 1950s. And since Hornings last year there. And during that era, from say 75 to 90, that staccato call that you just heard, that rhythm, that old-time radio play-by-play announcer rhythm that you heard at the 10, the 5, how he did that, he was as good as anybody out there, and I'm his son, and I'm a little partial on that, but he had his patter down at that point, and he was as pro an announcer as you ever heard during that time period. And a lot of folks will say, well, he missed a call on an interception like that, or he did that. Well, that was either my or Sack Bagley's fault, because we wound up pointing to the wrong number, and he had a bad interception missed call in that game where it was Bubba Brown that actually picked one off, I believe, instead of Terry Kernard. But that was because my brother Sack up at Anderson pointed to the wrong number at that. And so most people will blame the announcer for that. But there's a lot that goes into it that people don't know behind the scenes. But you listen to that call and you listen to his calls from that time period, and I'll put him up with any announcer out there. I really will.
Well, I was watching ESPN put out a thing called The Rights of Autumn a few years back. I think Lionsgate Film did it. If you're a Clemson fan, you want to check it out. It's really good stuff. About 8 DVDs maybe of the history of college football. And they were talking about some of those legendary broadcasters, and you mentioned kind of redoing the games off those little ticker tapes and everything. But there was a famous announcer, I want to say out of maybe Notre Dame, somewhere in that Chicago area, that would create a phantom lateral. Now, did your dad ever create a phantom lateral where he realized that the wrong player had the football, and he creates a pitch back so that when everybody's talking about the game, they have the right guy at least scoring?
I don't think he ever did that. He tell you he wasn't bright enough to come up with something like that. The one thing about Dad is he never had a problem owning up to a mistake. And if there was a mistake made, he'd just correct it and let you know there was a mistake made. And he never got on me or Sack for missing a tackle or who had the ball or something like that. It didn't happen that often, but it did happen because it's part of it. It's part of the process. And he never minded having an imperfect broadcast. Now, he was a perfectionist. He wanted it to be as professional as possible,
right.
But he understood human error was part of it. And so if something happened where there was a missed call, he'd just jump right in, tell you who did it, and move right on to the next play.
Yeah, so I'm gonna jump in. So, yep, I wrote that down wrong, that it was I put loss 16-10, but I was too young to remember that game, and I, for some reason, thought that we lost the game in Notre Dame and won the one in Clemson. It was the flip. It was Montana who came to Clemson and won just, a couple of years before that. I guess that was 1977. There was a gap in those two games in the year. So I made the mistake. I got to clear that up. I got to do what Jim Phillips would do. That was on me, not on anybody else working with me. I'll own up for that mistake.
You brought up that 77 Notre Dame game, and Dad, growing up as a kid, Notre Dame was it. And I remember riding over to that game with him, and I've never remember seeing him more excited for a football game other than the Orange Bowl, which he didn't get to broadcast. And he was like, you know what? Clemson has made the big time. We are playing Notre Dame in Clemson, South Carolina. And every Clemson fan who was there remembers that game because Clemson had a healthy lead in that game, and Joe Montana went on to do what he did so many times later on in his NFL career. He led a fourth-quarter comeback. But that game really, even though it was a loss, was one of those games that really catapulted Clemson into the national spotlight. What
would your dad think of the program today?
I think he'd be excited about it. I think he'd love Dabo. It's hard not to love Dabo. I mean, he is as genuine a guy as you will ever meet. He loves Clemson. He bleeds orange. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Clemson fans, rightfully so, have put Danny Ford up on a level where no other coach, even Coach Howard, has ever been, because he took Clemson someplace that they've never been. but I don't think there is any argument that Clemson is closer to getting back to that level than it has been at any point since Coach Ford left. And I think he would love this offense. I think he'd be like most Clemson fans, longing for a little bit of that old Clemson defense. But I think we're going to see that this year. But I think he'd be extremely excited about where the football program is. I think back of these last 10 years and how I would have loved to have heard him call some of C.J. Spiller's runs and some of these Boyd to Hopkins and Watkins throws and that sort of thing, and have heard his take on it, even though I enjoy Pete immensely. It's just one of those things that wasn't meant to be, but no, I think he'd be extremely excited about where Clemson is right now.
Now, the final thing, and I'll get you out of here. This is one of the reasons that we had you on. You mentioned the topic of the Ring of Honor and people talking about your dad and honoring him. And, look, you won't find any argument here from me. I don't care what the stipulations are, what you have to have, degrees, no degrees, 12 degrees. It doesn't matter to me. The man deserves to be in the Ring of Honor. He deserves to be up there amongst the greats and the legends in Clemson Tiger sports history. And I just want to let you know that, and I just want to get your thoughts on what that honor would have meant to your father or what it would mean to your father because, he's looking down and smiling on the Tigers.
Well, first of all, I want to say that is not something that the family has ever pushed for. We respect the guidelines that the university has set out. Opinion-wise, my opinion, if there has ever been an exception to the rule, then he would be it. Back when he began working in the 1950s, a 4-year degree was a rarity. It is not like today where so many young people have the opportunity to go to college. Now, he went to college, but he'd be the first one to tell you he was not a college student, and the grace of God just took over his life, and he started disc jockeying at a local radio station in Findlay, Ohio, near where he was going to college at Ashland College, and his career just went on from there, and he worked his way up. His education was on the job, and I think he learned very well. And so, that said, we understand exactly what the university policy is on this. I do believe that, there is some extenuating circumstances regarding Dad. If they were to somehow find a way to put him into the Ring of Honor, it would be an incredible honor. You look at the names that are up there, and it would be something, where you have a whole generation of Clemson fans who really don't know who Jim Phillips is now.
Right.
And it would be a way for them to know who he is and what he meant to the university. And he'd be the first to tell you he was not the greatest broadcaster God ever put on this earth, but he was ours. And that makes it special. And someone who is with the university for 35 years and really is the face and the voice in the media for the university for as long as he was, they have a special connection to the fans that I don't believe people of this generation can really understand. And so it would be an incredible honor, and we'd love to see it. That said, though, I am confident that something is going to be done this year. Whether it's the Ring of Honor, I do not know, but I do believe that something is going to be done by the university this year to honor him in some way. If it's the Ring of Honor, we'd be extremely excited about that, but we're going to be excited about whatever it was. Call it pride, call it whatever you will, but we're proud of him. And we would love to see him remembered in a way that Clemson fans for generations to come can look back like they do on a Coach Howard or a Banks McFadden, even though those were guys who lined up and played or were on the sidelines as coaches. That broadcaster in his generation was a special person. And when you're there for 35 years, you build a bond with fans that's never going to be replicated again. And so, like I say, I am very confident that in some way the university is going to find a way to honor him this year.
Well, Jeff, thank you very much for being here with us on TigerNet Talk. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon and sharing more memories of your dad. I know that Tiger fans, I mean, when you came in, I told you how much he means, but there are a few people in this world that I think we all carry with us in our minds when we think of those great plays, and as much as the players on the field were there for us, it's those memories of your dad's voice that so many Clemson fans, such as myself, and I'm a young Clemson fan, I'm 36, a guy such as myself, just remember so many of those great calls. So thank you very much for your time.
Lawton, our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Jeff Phillips, son of the voice of the Tigers, Jim Phillips. Fantastic interview here with us on TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty. Check them out online. And if you go to watch the show on Spreecast, you'll find a link to that video I was saying, or it's on YouTube, where they play Jim Phillips' voice calling that win over North Carolina. And there I am, the guy with hair. And it's the first guy you see, dead center. We'll be back with more TigerNet Talk right after this.
In my head, if I pointed it just
The 1988 season was a great year for the Clemson Tigers, finishing 10-2 with a win over Oklahoma in the Citrus Bowl. But it was a better year for Clemson fans. That season, Tigertown Graphics became your source for custom tees, promotional items, and embroidery. Conveniently located in the heart of downtown Clemson, their retail store proudly displays Clemson shirts that are designed and printed directly on site. Whether you're looking for the latest Clemson t-shirts or ordering products for your school, organization, or business, Tigertown Graphics can help with all of your t-shirt needs. Find them online at www.tigertowngraphics.com. A Clemson tradition since 1988.
Blake Austin of South Carolina Farm Bureau is an insurance agent you can count on to meet all your needs. Home, auto, health, life, you name it, Blake's got you covered, and he can save you on your yearly rates. Call him now for a free quote, 803-259-5008. That's 803-259-5008. Or just go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com and click on the Farm Bureau logo to be connected to Blake. Do like I do and work with the best agent around, and you can tweet that. Hey there, Tiger fans. When you take yourself out to the ball game, make sure that you're staying at the Clemson University Conference Center and Inn. That's right, it's the closest hotel to Doug Kingsmore Stadium. Lakeside accommodations, complimentary continental breakfast bar with waffles, the Seasons by the Lake restaurant, Joe's Place Bar, and the Walker Golf Course are all waiting for you right around the corner from Doug Kingsmore Stadium. For reservations, contact General Manager Sharon Franks at sharonf@clemson.edu or call 1-888-654-9020 and ask to speak to Sharon. Buy yourself some peanuts and Cracker Jacks, but make sure that you stay at the Clemson University Conference Center and Inn. A winning team requires having great team members. If you're a landowner interested in selling timber or are considering buying or selling land, call the winning team of Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC today. Put the knowledge and skills of professional licensed foresters and realtors to work for your team. To learn more about services offered by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC, visit www.crosscreektimber.com and easily follow the link to real estate or reach them by phone 864-517-3620 or 864-517-3621.
There's something about looking and feeling classy that everyone enjoys. Check out Edisto Outdoors, an apparel brand inspired by our southern animals and environment. These shirts feature soft-touch prints that will keep you looking your best in all types of weather. Look for Edisto Outdoors coming soon to many fine retailers across the state, or visit www.edistooutdoors.com. Technical, comfortable, livable.
This is Clemson Tom, and you're listening to Clemson Sports Talk. So sit down and have you a cold one and listen to a true American.
I like driving down Clemson Boulevard.
My goodness, I got to tell you what, that was amazing, outstanding. There have been some interviews on this program that I've really enjoyed doing, and I've had some great guests, and I tell you, that's the one thing we've really tried to do this year, and I thank everybody who joins us live. I thank all the thousands of you that download the show. That's one of the more surreal things for me is when I look at the number of downloads we get, it just blows me away. But for the loyal people who join us live, thank you so much. Sunday nights at 9, Wednesday nights at 9, you can watch the program on TigerNet. on Wednesday nights, but on Sunday nights and Wednesday nights both on ClemsonSportsTalk.com. I hope you'll go by there. Follow us on Twitter. We're at Clemson Sports. Clemson news, notes, information, and more 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Waffle House of Clemson Sports. Scattered, smothered, and covered. But very few, if any, have ever given me the chill bumps that I got during that interview with Jeff Phillips. It's amazing to me. And I think as a guy who, Jeff talked about his dad and how he came up through the years and worked his way up and got the job at Clemson University. And when you do something like this and you start off, and I've told you guys before about episode number 1, the 17 worst minutes in the history of broadcasting, perhaps. You just begin to recognize the talent that the guys like Jim Phillips had and the preparation that he has going into these games and getting ready for that. And, it's great to say, yeah, wouldn't that be an awesome job? You're broadcasting in Clemson Saturdays, rest of the week, you're laying by the pool, hanging out, doing nothing. But the preparation that his dad and others put in and the recognition as he got older that he wasn't the same broadcaster he was when he was 35, 36 years old, that his eyes weren't as good. Maybe he might miss a number or somebody might point him in the wrong direction. But when you do that and you do what I do for this program, you realize just how hard Jim Phillips worked to be great. And the honor and recognition that Clemson should give him is the Ring of Honor. Now, I know it's cool that there is a statue outside the building or a bronze sculpture of the Tiger Cub and all of that. That would be something else I would consider if you were going to keep him out. If you were going to keep him out of the Ring of Honor for the fact that there's no degree, and I've said before, give him a degree in broadcasting. Even if we don't have a broadcasting department, give him a degree in journalism. If you can give Nancy O'Dell a degree, I love Nancy O'Dell, believe me, nice. Just tried to actually get her to do some stuff with us earlier this season in a little pick'em contest. Perhaps going to get her involved this coming year, maybe even get her on the program. I know you guys in the chat room are clamoring for me to get her on video. I know you want. If there's ever going to be an interview done with video, you guys wanted Allie Rogers and you wanted Nancy O'Dell. But if Nancy O'Dell is going to get an honorary scholarship, for crying out loud, posthumously, I think that's how you say it. I'm not the best person at pronouncing that word. Jim Phillips. I truly believe that he's a guy that would deserve it, and if that's what it takes to get him in the Ring of Honor, do it. But a statue outside the stadium would be cool too. A bronze statue as you're going into the stadium, maybe outside the Williams Gate, somewhere on the broadcasting side of the stadium. That would be tremendous and such an honor and a testament to what Jim Phillips meant, because in your head, that voice still resonates and rings, and it will for a long, long time. So thank you to Jeff for coming on, his entire family for being willing to share his father with Clemson Tiger Nation for so many years, and just for reminiscing with us just for this evening and giving us an opportunity to reflect on those great moments in Tiger sports history. Another great moment in Clemson sports history went down today. Not Clemson whipping up on Furman twice. They are whipping them up pretty good again. 12-2 in the second ball game. I believe that's in the top of the 8th inning now. The early game was 14-2, so Clemson getting it done by a total of 26-4 so far in this doubleheader against the Furman Paladins. And yes, I know we're at the 1 hour mark, but you know what you're getting here? This is like a baseball game that's gone into extra innings. This is free. On the house. We're putting this on the house. Clemson Sports Talk for you here on TigerNet Talk presented by Cross Creek Timber. We're doing it for you absolutely free. Mylon Richard, number 2 rated tight end in America, nephew of UGA great Herschel Walker, has committed to the Clemson Tigers. He says he's 100% all in. When Jeb Blazevich committed to Georgia, that opened up the opportunity here for Richard, who, oddly enough, his name, it cracks me up because his name looks so foreign. If he were French, his name would be Mylon Richard. But Mylon Richard is going to be a Clemson Tiger commit, a 4-star recruit, a nice tight end prospect for the Clemson Tigers. And when you look at that tight end position and what a weapon it's become for Clemson, not just on the field but nationally in recruiting. I mean, what a difference a couple of years makes of having some outstanding tight end talent and guys who got the football and made plays scored touchdowns. There's been a gap in Clemson Tiger football if you go back. Probably, I would say maybe from about 2000 to 92, somewhere in that range. Maybe 2002 to 92, about a 10-year gap where the tight end position at Clemson was underutilized. I don't think it was something that was a priority. But that has clearly changed for the Clemson Tigers. And, when you have Sam Cooper go down, that's a little bit of a blow to that tight end position. But there's no reason to believe that Stanton Seckinger, who came over and transitioned from the wide receiver position, can't play that spot. Obviously, the coaching staff high on Jordan Leggett, the redshirt freshman coming in. J.J. McCullough. And I think Leggett, probably will not redshirt, I should say. Has an opportunity to redshirt, but comes in early in January. Obviously has a chance to get in the spring game, to get some extra practices under his belt. Whether he redshirts or not is up for grabs. But right now with Sam Cooper going down, he probably doesn't. Unless sometime between now and August 31, J.J. McCullough really steps up his game, because Jordan Leggett, when you look at that skill set, that size, 6'6", big hands, great body control, can go up, snag the football. That's exciting, but the future looks even brighter. Brighter and brighter. Mylon Richard committing to the Clemson Tigers. I know Jim Phillips would be excited of the way recruiting has gone for Clemson. You look at the offers. Offers from Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, South Carolina. But it comes down and he decides he's going to go ahead and end things and choose Clemson. So recruiting, we take it with a grain of salt here on the program. We've been fooled before, and I'm sure somewhere down along the line we'll be fooled again. Someone will say, yes, I'm all in. I'm 100% Tiger. And it won't come through. But the one thing you have seen under Dabo Swinney, and I think when Jeff Phillips said it, I don't think he could have said any better, is Dad would have been proud of this program, the direction it's headed, and Dabo Swinney has Clemson back to a level they haven't been in since Danny Ford. You look at the ACC post-spring power rankings put out by ESPN and the ACC blog, the Tigers sitting on number 1. Some of that because of the performance of Sammy Watkins, the rest on the backs of Taj Boyd being the best and most experienced quarterback in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Clemson returning players on both sides of the football all over the field. Really only having to replace center Dalton Freeman on the offensive side of the ball. And then if you want to go out and look at Nuke Hopkins, but you realize that behind Nuke Hopkins was some of the best wide receiver talent in the country. Tight end position, Brandon Ford, we just talked about that. Maybe the biggest question marks at the running back position, Andre Ellington. The playmaking ability he had, but there's backups there that have had opportunities before. I still think Zach Brooks has a chance to have a breakout season for Clemson. I thought we saw a couple of plays in the spring game from Zach Brooks that led me feel like that kid has a chance to take some balls to the house the way I saw a little 28 C.J. Spiller do it. Not quite as big as C.J. Spiller. And C.J.'s not a huge back by any means, but Zach Brooks is a little bit smaller than Spiller. But as quick as a hiccup. But I'm telling you what, to see Clemson on the top of those ACC post-spring power rankings certainly has to make you feel good. And Herschel Walker's nephew, as we mentioned, Mylon Richard. God, I call him Richard again. I want to call him the Frenchman, Mylon Richard. I should have never come up with the French joke. I apologize to Mr. Richard. Should I call him Mr. Richard now? Now that sounds like that's a man's man right there, Mr. Richard. And finally, we get to where we left you at the beginning of the program. The top 10 programs that Bleacher Report, who is now doing some stuff for CNN-SI, says they expect to dominate early in the college football playoff era. Notre Dame is on that list. Ohio State makes the call. Southern Cal. Michigan Wolverines. The LSU Tigers. The Georgia Bulldogs. The Florida State Seminoles. The Wisconsin Badgers. Your Clemson Tigers. Alabama. Hey, you got to like being in that list. And part of that comes from the fact that you're playing in the ACC. And we know that in the Atlantic Coast Conference, you're not going to get that national appeal and attention. But when you go out and you schedule up the Georgias when they're near the top, when you schedule up a South Carolina who's obviously playing the best football they've ever played, for Clemson to be mentioned among those teams, rewind the program, go back to the very beginning, and remember what I told you about the direction college football is headed. Whether that's an 8-team or a 16-team playoff, where we are headed for sure is eventually to a la carte programming for sports packages. And right now, the Clemson Tigers are one of the most marketable teams because of the offensive game that they play and the players that we have on the field. If we can continue to bring in great recruits, that can carry over, and Clemson football can be one of those elite teams and truly could be one of the dominant teams in the beginning of this college football playoff era. There's no denying that fact based on where they are now. You just got to go out and win football games. Thank you so much for being here. An hour and 8 minutes doing the program with you. I'm your host, Lawton Swan, signing off until Sunday night at 9 o'clock when we come back with the Clemson Hotline. Thank you to Jeff Phillips for joining us, son of Jim Phillips, and thank you to all our sponsors and Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty for presenting the program. Until next time, y'all take care now, and go Tigers!